like a dog who can't stay out of the trash, I have returned, though in hindsight I always knew I was going to kind of return, considering the fact that when I drew Belphegor, Leviathan, and Satan, the characters hadn't come out yet, so I knew I would eventually have to talk about those sins within the show of Hell of a Boss, because, well, they do go hand in hand in some weird way, even if the designs I made at the time are my own interpretation, but I do like to somewhat point out the design issues and strengths within the VisiPop universe as a kind of way to help you guys put words to your thoughts, and I'm very aware that Viv has decided that the designs themselves do not need to mimic the actual biblical version's designs, and that's perfectly fine. However, the themes, the symbolism, and even the coloring kind of makes the designs feel very underwhelming and also make the characters not feel like what they're supposed to represent. And oh boy, did the reveal of the final 3 sins truly represent that. Well, except Satan. Only design note I have for him is different horn shapes and coloring the horns different. But anyway, for this video, I'm only going to talk about Belphegor, aka the Prince of Sloth, or in this version, the Princess of Sloth. I will talk about Envy later, because it's the one design out of the 7 that I truly feel did not deliver in any way. I can't get into it, but Sloth, aka Belphegor, I say with air quotes, though I do think the design hits in a way, but not by much, because there's a lot going on that I feel I need to explain. So while I did say that it was okay that the sins don't need to look like the stock image that we have of them, I do think it's important to reference some of the design if you're going to use their name / lore, because, well, this design is not Belphegor. This design is very clearly referencing Baphomet, and I've already talked about this in my Sloth video about the whole Belphegor and Baphomet situation. And yeah, we don't see the bottom part of her, however the whole candle torch, the goat-like appearance, even though they went more alpaca, but it is very clearly referencing Baphomet. Also, Baphomet is not a sin or necessarily a demon per se, but more of a balance of oneself. But yeah, Belphegor and Baphomet do not have anything in common lore-wise, nor do they have any roles that are similar to each other. There's really nothing that ties them together. They're as opposite as can be, so to have Baphomet be depicted as Sloth is very weird because it just does not make sense lore-wise. So I'm gonna be calling this design Baphomet because this is not Belphegor in any capacity. But anyway, so the design itself is not bad as Baphomet. I think the themes are all there that let you know that this is Baphomet, like the candle torch, the goat-like appearance. Plus, now the medical theming of the sloth ring makes so much more sense now due to Baphomet having a similar symbol to the rod of, cannot say that word, which should probably be a dead giveaway now, like they probably never used Belphegor as an inspiration at all. But anyway, the colors are very cute. I love the pink, so I do like the cotton candy sweetness of it all. Really amps the sleepy part of her design, and while I do like the eye theming going on, I do think it's a little much, and it also kind of bugs me that the eyes do not all look the same, like pupil wise. I think if the pupils were all the same, I'd have no problems. They really don't look cohesive, you know what I mean? But I still think it's very cute for what it is, and if this was just Baphomet, I think I would be okay with it, because, you know, obviously Baphomet can be depicted however you choose, as she's more of a symbolic deity, or well, her design is. The actual demon's a different story, so having this version is fine if she was just Baphomet. But I guess my only actual note, I just wish the design had a little bit more going on. Also, I wish the character was a little bit more dressed up. They're at court, and I understand that the show's going for the whole sloth is lazy, I can't be bothered to get dressed mentality, but seeing as how Asmodeus, Beelzebub, and Mammon dressed up, it's very odd that Baphomet and Leviathan and Satan didn't. Plus, those 3 were finally in outfits that matched their circus roles, yet the last 3 aren't. Why? These were the last 3 characters that we had not been introduced to yet. And this is what we get? So yeah, I would have liked there to be a bit more going on. Anyway, I don't know what else to say. Her appearance was fast. Because I got like a few quick seconds of this character, she didn't talk, she didn't move, she didn't do anything. I only got to see like her head and chest, so I don't have much else to say about the design other than what I was able to see. However, I do want to point out that she actually has 2 sets of arms. Like, she's got the little angel dust arm thing going on, but of course you couldn't really see it. You have to like really be looking for it. But low-key, at this point, I don't even care, cause Viv will slap multiple arms on anything, and at this point, I've just learned to ignore it. But again, my main issue is the making of Baphomet, but calling her Belphegor. That's the only thing that's bugging me, cause the design is fine if the design is Baphomet, but seeing as how they want to call the design Belphegor, I just have to sit there and just be like, no! Anyway, I'm talking in circles. Let's move on to the design and some fun lore. Okay, so this isn't a redesign, it's a reimagine, which is basically me drawing my interpretation of the character and using their actual biblical lore as reference. And yeah, I could redesign the show's version, but honestly, it's fine. It just needs a little editing, like boom. There, okay? Now that that's done, my version. So the lore on Baphomet is very minimal. The earliest we learn their name is around the 13th to 14th century, when the Knights of Templar were accused of worshipping Baphomet as a demonic idol, and it wasn't until the 19th century did we get first look at what they look like, and even then it was just because of people speculating and debating the suppression of the Knights. Also, the Knights themselves were just holy knights, aka military order of the Catholic faith, and how they came to worship Baphomet isn't really clear. I mean, it just seems that when King Philip ordered the knights to be arrested due to being in debt with them, and the knights were tortured into admitting false information, including the worship of Baphomet, as like they couldn't definitively say they either worshipped Baphomet or a mummified head that they think was John the Baptist. So honestly, Baphomet could have just easily been a random name or random demonic deity that they just pulled from a hat. But then again, the whole depiction of them could have been made up as well. I mean, pretty much all of it is made up, but you get my point. But yeah, they could have been made up, and since people were talking about the Knights of Templar in the 19th century, again, artwork was made, and similar to the Red Satan figure we have today, Baphomet was used to sensationalize and demonize secret societies, which probably explains why the Satanic Church reclaimed the deity. I mean, their original meaning, or specifically their name's meaning, is immersion of wisdom, so they aren't bad per se, but Catholic depictions of beings who give knowledge or wisdom tend to not be seen as a good thing. Plus, they also represent the untamed forces of the natural world, so there's some connection to Pan and paganism, another thing the Catholic Church did not like. But however, Baphomet does represent the hermaphroditic side of dual gender, which is a nod to the divine hermaphrodite, which basically is a form of unity, wholesomeness, and the combination of opposites. Can you tell I dug deep for this one? In my sloth video, I felt bad I didn't include as much information on Baphomet as I would usually do for everybody else, but this video was about sloth, So yeah, I'm kind of overcompensating with the amount of information that I learned about Baphomet. And while it's just more symbolic talk about what is used in their form, I think the info did help in my design, since Baphomet is a perfect blend of angelic and demonic, male and female, so I saw no real reason to draw outside the original design's themes. I kept the goat head, the beard, and the pentagram, a symbol that's changed a lot over the years. I prefer the paganism symbolic meaning of masculine and feminine, along as a symbol of protection. I also added a kind of circle around it, though it's more eye-shaped, but I wanted to include the unity part of the design, since that's Baphomet's whole thing. Anyway, I did keep Baphomet's horns, but I'm not the biggest fan of the shape. I always try to make demonic horns look more like crooked crowns, So yeah, I went with a more sharp upturn ram's horns. I also found the eye theming of the Vivziepop version pretty smart. Again, if it was just Baphomet, because eyes are symbolic for higher power and enlightenment, which works well with Baphomet's older symbolism and a little bit of their new symbolism for empowerment and carnal wisdom. Key symbolism here is always going to be wisdom in some way. But yeah, eyes on his horns. I also used a lot of groups of threes symbolism, like 3 eyes on each horn, 3 dots, and 3 chains on their hips, as 3 has a meaning of balance or completeness. Anyway though, you'll notice I didn't include the torch, mainly because for me, it's all a little too much and feels too top heavy. So to make up for it, I made their hair longer and the underside flames, along with having a floating flame above her head and flames coming out from their fingertips. As for their overall body, I kept it close to the original, so wider chest with small breasts, narrow hips, and yeah, they're both genders, so no worries there, cause I mean, if YouTube would let me, they'd be fully naked, but they won't. So I dressed them in minimal clothing, which would have been a black see-through shawl, but obviously I can't do that, so it's just a black shawl, and a high-rise loincloth held up by 4 snakes. Yes, they're real, and yes, they're fused together in the back. I wanted to keep the original design of the snakes, since they're clearly meant to hint to the male side of Baphomet, since snakes are seen as phallic, but also conjoined snakes represent duality of the earth, which works for Baphomet. Also, I did create a random symbol on the stomach area. It's just a weird scribble of the circle thing in their lap, along with using the crescent moons and snake staff, because honestly, I felt bad I didn't add it in. But it's like, how does that work outfit-wise? Like, no wonder Baphomet's always sitting. I did keep the goat legs, because duh. Also, I know Baphomet's half goat and half human, but the image makes it look like they have a, like, goat head on, so I did my best to make their body feel more balanced, like making the neck longer and thicker and have their fur go all the way to their chest. Made their arms hairy, and it's hard to see, but you can see where the separation of their human body and goat legs start. Also, the colors help since I made Baphomet more monochromatic, since more symbolism talk, but in art, monochromatic can mean oneness of the universe since you're using light and dark shades only, though I did add light blue to their coloring as a sign of their marriage to Belphegor, whose sin color is light blue, though when they weren't married, all the blue colors were white. As for accessories, I figured that since Baphomet is married and a deity, it made sense to give them very muted gold jewelry, aka a triangle-themed low-neck choker with an eye gem and simple muted gold rings on their horns and horn covers. Also, I did go back and fix the hands, cause the reason I added the blue lines and tips was so the fingers were more noticeable, but I recolored them using the darker fur color, which looks so much better now, so I don't need the blue markings. As for the wings, I kept them roughly the same, just changed the color, and yeah, I could have added something to them, but I didn't want to go too crazy, because honestly, the bigger details on their body should really just be their forehead and arms, and like, it's hard to see, but there is something written on their arms. The arm pointing up translates to separate, and the arm pointing down translates to join together, which feels pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, I couldn't really see what it said at the time when I drew this, so that is why the arm tattoos are just scribbles. Anyway though, I love this design. They might be a tiny bit too tall, but overall, I'm crazy about them. Now for a little AU talk. So in my version of the sins, Belphegor has 6 wives, each one for a different reason, and while he cares for them in many ways, Baphomet is his true love. Baphomet had been at the bottom of the demonic hierarchy for a while, till the satanic church started worshipping them, causing Satan to take notice. She liked their very clear understanding of balance and fairness, and gave Baphomet the role of being Hell's judge, or well, the final decider and punishment maker. Belphegor saw them and boom, love at first sight on both fronts. Baphomet is very, in the best way, a tactical hippie. Even though they're not all-knowing, they are very one with how the world should work. Baphomet doesn't let sob stories excuse what happened or was done. Truth is very important to them. Also, to Belphegor, Baphomet is extremely smart. When it comes to people, their ability to understand and keep everyone accountable and not falling into what benefits them astonishes him. Baphomet has a strong strong sense of evil and good in them and reminds Belphegor of heaven when it was new, making Belphegor feel nostalgic, which is weird for a man who always looks towards the future. And that's also what Baphomet loves about Belphegor. You know, someone who sees a future driven by ambition. And yes, Baphomet can understand the sins and their many faults, but enjoys seeing them work, as they are but part of a bigger balanced universe. What they do is important. They also kind of see Belphegor as themselves, a messy blend of light and dark, since Belphegor never chose to leave heaven, and sees their sin as a blessing and a curse. Though all sins could be seen that way, but Belphegor doesn't take pride in his sin like the others. Baphomet also has no real connection to the other sins. Baphomet is very neutral with them, other than Satan, who they share a more work-like bond due to the Satanic Church. Lucifer is also involved, but they don't speak much. His being is too much for Baphomet to deal with. And that's pretty much all I have AU-wise. I mean, other than how Baphomet, Belphegor, and the other wives act, which isn't anything crazy, since they all also only love Belphegor for different reasons, and don't see each other as competition. Pretty much everyone Belphegor marries is extremely analytical and has less emotion about the overall relationship they have with him other than his kids and grandchildren. But yeah, that's all I got. Anyway, next video will be Lucifer redesigned. And what I mean by that is like the show version, because I know I can do it without the biblical lore stuff. I can. Also, thank you again, 4'10", for the super on my last video. On the wall of teeth you go. And thank you to the new member, Wawa_IQ. Welcome to the madness, and thank you for your support. Also, thank you to all the other members for sticking around. You have my whole heart. Please also remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Follow me on my socials right here. And if possible, hit that join button or super to join the board of teeth. It really helps out the channel and me. I hope you all have a super fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!